We're Rumi. We're developing an app using satellite technology to provide farmers like you with cover readings so that you can make the best grazing decisions. You can make them as early as possible and you can make them easily. And this is what we're going to be demonstrating to you this evening. A lot of people ask us how it works, maybe seen some other attempts at doing this kind of thing. The three co-founders, Danny, Johannes and I, and Britta, we worked for Mercedes Autonomous Vehicle Program. So we're taking the knowledge we learned there about how to work with big complex data sets, satellite imagery and machine learning, and we're applying that to grass management. There are a couple of different layers that we use, some different technologies that we fuse to be able to bring you these grass matter readings. We use multispectral images from Sentinel-2 satellites. We're integrating radar data, and then we apply machine learning to both radar and multispectral images. We also are collecting thousands of plate meter readings from farmers, which we calibrate against on the ground, and to build our grass growth model. And also just to mention, but we'll tell you more about it later, we've just set up a pilot farm project with 10 farms across the UK and Northern Ireland to do the most accurate ground truthing we can. So we've got high quality weather stations on these farms. We're doing cut and weigh sampling as well as digital GPS plate meter reading. And really good to have Ian on the call this evening, and I think Dan Burdett here as well. So that's excellent. And we'll tell you more about this as we go as well. So I'm going to pass over to James at this stage to kick off with the Spring Grazing Management.
Cool, thanks, Paddy. Is there a chance to see the results of that poll? I see a couple of people having issues submitting it. I don't know if that's some interaction from your side.
I can click end poll.
Yeah, okay, try that.
So let's do that. Yeah, share results.
Okay, that looks pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, so yeah, giving people access just to choose one enterprise. Got a good mix, pretty even mix between sheep and beef, and a few dairy guys as well. Most people using plate meter. And then a nice spread about how often people are measuring. But yeah, pretty evenly split, isn't it? A third, and a third, and a couple of people not measuring at the moment. Cool, awesome.
Good stuff. I'm just going to make sure, that you're ready to share, James.
Cool, thanks, Paddy. I think that's pretty good. Okay. Yeah, well, evening everyone, and yeah, thanks for joining us and yeah, giving up your evenings. Hopefully we'll provide a nice distraction for anyone that is lambing or calving tonight. So I'm just going to chat through. Well, actually, first of all, I'm going to say, you know, it's been exciting. I've through our work with Precision Grazing, we're working with a range of farmers, predominantly sheep and beef guys, but it's also some dairy across the country. And a lot of that work sits around you helping farmers to manage their pasture better. And with that, we recognise the importance of regular measuring. In 2017, I was lucky enough to be part of a project that was looking at using satellite data to estimate pasture dry matters. And there were some really good results that came out of that project, but there wasn't the right people involved at the time, and the project sort of didn't go any further. So it's been a sort of continual frustration that we've got the ability, or the data sets are there, and what was needed was a team of people to come together with a good vision, and also importantly in this case, the right ability to take those data sets and to turn them into useful information. Because I think as farmers, we're getting, you know, provided with more and more data than ever, but it's turning that data into useful information that you guys can use to make good decisions with. That's really important. That's the valuable bit. So yeah, see some good potential with the Rumi product, and hopefully some of you might be able to get involved and yeah, help make the product even better. So the reason for, so hopefully to give you guys some useful things to think about this evening as well, and also to show how maybe Rumi could help you guys make some of your spring grazing decisions. Just going to run through a few points. I was going to start with just a top level view, look at grazing management. Then we'll go into spring grazing and we'll link up with some demos. And we'll also think about the next 2 or 3 weeks on farm and what might be happening. So we consider what is the role of the farm manager. I used to say, what's the role of a grazing manager? But I think the way industry is heading, that all farm managers, if they're managing livestock, will need to become really good grazing managers. So the role of the farm manager or grazing manager is to supply the right quantity and quality of feed to the animals at the right time. So hey, that's pretty simple, isn't it? It should be simple, but we're dealing with really complex systems, aren't we? We've got weather patterns that are ever changing, and we've got, for many of us, especially those with sheep and beef on farm, we've got lots of different stock classes with very different metabolic demands at different times of the season. And it's sometimes hard to manage that complexity. One thing that we have got, one tool we have got is the plate meter. And by using the plate meter, we measure the grass, and then that helps us assess the quantity, and also give us some guides as to the quality of that as well. We think about what the farm looks like as a system. If we were to draw it onto a graph to try and make some sense of it, then we've got feed supply, which is pasture growth in green, and we've got animal demand in red. You see the pasture growth curve is pretty normal, isn't it? It's sort of rising, hopefully rising now during spring, peaking around May for most of us, and then declining through the season. So a successful farm and a successful manager matches that supply-demand balance. It makes sure the animals have got the right quantity and quality of feed throughout the season. That supply and demand balance, so knowing what the farm is growing and also knowing what the animals need on a kilograms of dry matter per hectare basis, means that we can also estimate or determine what's going to happen to average farm cover. So average farm cover is the average amount of grass on farm for any given day. And that's pretty fundamental to our farm or to our pastoral systems, because our grass leaves are our solar panels. The more grass on farm on a given day, the more or the higher the growth potential. And it's our manipulation of that farm cover that really sets the potential, the productive potential of the farm. We also be mindful that we're dealing with predominantly ryegrass systems at the moment. And so more up to a point is better, but too much is also not good, because too much means we lose quality. And we can see in the example here, we've got a couple of cases. So we know we can grow a lot of grass in the spring period, but on this farm or in this example, the average farm cover is dropping, I would suggest, sort of dangerously low, depending on the stocking rate of the farm. And that means the farm's losing those solar panels. It's losing the ability to capture light, and it's therefore limiting its growth potential. In spring, that's potentially really costly to the business. Opportunity cost mainly from not fully feeding ewes or not fully feeding cows, not enabling those animals, those lactating animals, to reach their peak production. And if we miss the opportunity, we don't get another chance to regain it. It means lighter lambs at weaning, it means lighter calves at weaning, it means cows not hitting or achieving peak milk yield. Conversely, if average farm cover gets too high, we may lose pasture quality. And it's a point we'll touch on later on, that in the spring, actually, we don't have to worry about pasture quality. Generally speaking, it's great, really good. So in the spring, it's quantity. Later in the season, it's quality. And that average farm cover is really setting the farm's quality, pasture quality late in the season, particularly with the mainly ryegrass dominant pasture. So on a graph, it looks fairly simple, but when you come into farm level, this isn't just the only job you've got to do, unfortunately. It's the animal health, it's the farm management, it's the people management, and it's all the other complexity that goes on farm. So to be able to have a tool that takes away some of that complexity, that maybe speeds up some of the measurement, that collects some of the data for you, it's going to be really, really useful. And yeah, hopefully we'll do that shortly.
Okay.
So, do you want to launch that poll, Paddy? So just say, recognising how important average farm cover, so the average amount of grass on farm is at this time of year, we've just got a poll for you, which asks you some questions on that to see where everyone's at the moment.
Here we go, and launching now. So what is your average farm cover, kilograms dry matter per hectare at the moment? If you measured what was your pasture pasture growth, kilograms of dry matter per hectare. And then if you measured what's your current farm demand from pasture, kilograms dry matter per hectare. I think you're allowed one choice per question.
Yeah, surely.
Obviously would be the case.
Yeah, so average farm cover, average amount of grass on farm. If you've measured recently or measured at least twice this season, what's your pasture growth? And then farm demand, so that's the demand of the animals spread across the effective grazing area of the farm. So for instance, if we had 3 cows a hectare, our demand would probably be somewhere between 41 and 50 kilos of dry matter per hectare. Okay, ready to close that?
Ending the poll now. And sharing the results. There we go.
Okay, cool. Okay, so that's pretty interesting. So 2/3 of you have given us an answer for what the average farm cover is, and the average there looks to be sort of 1750 to 2000 kilos. Growth's looking quite low, less than 10 kilos.
Yeah.
And farm demand is somewhat variable, and that kind of sits with what we find. So in terms of if we ask people to estimate whether they've measured or not what the results of those numbers, most people can have an estimate of what the average farm cover is. They've got an idea, a feeling for maybe how much grass is on farm. How accurate that is, it varies. In terms of pasture growth, well, again, some people have got a feeling, a guess for it, and others maybe aren't so sure. We see that because we've got a higher percentage of people who didn't know the answer to that question. And then the last question, what's your current farm demand from pasture? So that's, what do you need? How many kilos of dry matter per hectare per day of grass growth do you need to meet your demand? Well, a lot of people don't know the answer to that question, and that's sort of fair enough, because if you're a dairy farmer, you've got kind of one group, one stock class, and one demand to think about. And so I'd expect you to know the answer to that question. Dairy, if you're beef and sheep, multiple groups, different stages of pregnancy or lactation, it's a lot more complex, and it's going to take a very big envelope to work that number out potentially, particularly if they're split across different blocks of land and you've got fields moving in and out of the farm as well. So, but knowing that number, knowing your supply, pasture growth, knowing your demand, knowing those two is really important, because if we know those two, we can make decisions on a week-to-week basis. And it's been a big failing, I think, of sort of where the sector's been lacking a bit at the moment is farmers being able to quickly say what their demand is, kilograms of dry matter per hectare, and say my demand's 30 at the moment, my growth's 20, my average farm cover's dropping, but it's okay because I've got a couple of weeks buffer. So that's the kind of clarity we'd like to have on farm at this time of year. So anyway, maybe this is something that Rumi can help with.
Cool. Okay.
So,
stop sharing.
I think that leads us to your demo, Paddy.
Yeah. Okay. Good stuff. So let's take a look at how we can, how Rumi shows you your farm covers. So here we have a demo farm, and in the top left of the corner, it shows you the farm cover. So that's 2,091 kilograms of dry matter per hectare. We've got the growth rate just beneath it. Something that Rumi also does is it shows you the cover variation across the field. So if you hover, then, excuse me, zooming in now. If I hover over the different shades of green, then it will show me the different variation across each field. And if I click into a specific field, it will tell me the cover value for that field as well, the average cover. So here we can see it's 2,070. And it does this for any field I click on. I can very quickly see what the cover and the available dry matter is.
I guess an important point to make, Paddy, is that it's a demo farm because the animal groups are made up, but the cover measurements are real. So it's Ian's farm, isn't it, I believe?
Yes, right. And thank you very much, Ian, for letting us use your farm. It's we've made a copy of it, so don't worry. Your farm is still there for you to use as you wish.
I think when he installed 2 groups of sheep on his farm, he wasn't best pleased.
So it's really easy to add fields in and edit the geometry of the ones you've got. We'll just add a field in now just to show you how it works and how quickly it computes. So yeah, we've had our heads in this, getting everything ready. So yeah, there we go. Test field, hit save, and should compute pretty quickly, which previous competitors have taken days to do. So there you go. In a matter of seconds, we have a field. I'm gonna add another one as well, just to show you that one more time. So you go test, choose your area of land, add another paddock, and again take your time to get the geometry that you want. Hit save.
This could be slightly addictive for kind of spying on your neighbours, couldn't it?
Yeah, you can. Yeah, you can check out their covers.
Or it could be maybe not neighbours, maybe contacts on Twitter. See if they, see if their claims are as good as their covers are as good as they claim. Exactly.
So at the moment, we expect about 4 updates from multispectral images per month with the technology we've got at the moment. And we're busy integrating radar, which will actually allow us to give you updates 4 times a week. So it'll be much more frequent. In the interim, what we've done is we've built in a feature that allows farmers to enter their own plate meter readings as well, their own farm walks in between satellite passes. And this is so that if we miss any farming events such as grazing or mowing, that you can enter those in. And also it means as a farmer, you can recalibrate the fields to your plate meter readings so that you know exactly what you're looking at. And so I'd just like to show you that as well quickly. So you click on the plus sign, go to add covers, and the date, the start and the finish of your farm walk. So let's say it's today, started at 9 AM, maybe you finished around lunchtime. Hit next. And it shows you all the average covers that Rumi tells you, and you can update this with your own plate meter readings. I'm just going to enter in 3 for now. So some of them might just be adjustments. So 2298, let's say, and then 2176. And then on this field, let's say this one's been grazed. So actually it's quite a bit lower. And then we'll hit next. So you can actually go through and enter your entire farm walk there, or if you just want to update a couple of fields where there have been farming events, also no problem. So here, let's say, got a few options: part grazed, grazed, or cut for silage. We'll say this one was grazed. Pre-cover, let's say 2,400, and they went in 2 days ago. And post cover of 1,600, and they came out today. And then you can hit next to save that. Now we've just entered in 3 fields, so the Rumi accuracy is looking pretty good, but it tells you that's to within plus minus 200 kilograms of dry matter per hectare. So it actually gives you a gauge to see how well the Rumi measurements are performing against your own. And once you hit save, that would recalibrate your fields to these latest plate meter readings. I'm not gonna hit save right now because we've got the farm set up for some of the next things we're going to show you. But I also hello. Ah, okay.
Yeah, still with me.
Yeah. So I also just wanted to show you a slide. Ah, yeah, here we are. So this shows you the standard deviation we've had from March. So we've had 321 readings that farmers have put in this month. And overall, our standard deviation is 745 kilograms of dry matter per hectare, but we're getting better all the time. So towards the end of March, we've got a standard deviation now overall of 245 kilograms of dry matter per hectare. And we're going to get better and better. The more data we get, the more we're going to improve this. So we're already in the ballpark. James, back over to you.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Paddy. Yeah, so it's nice to see the accuracy of your measurements versus the plate meter readings you've had submitted. Like I say, it's improving as more data gets put in. And yeah, we hope that's something we know that's something that's going to continue. The more data that comes in this season. So I'm going to go back and share my screen, which hopefully you guys can see now.
Yep.
Cool. I guess as a small example, so if we're not measuring, then it's a bit like being in a cupboard with the doors closed. And as we start measuring or start to get some pasture measurement data, we can see the light, we can move towards it. We know we have an idea, a sense of direction. And then if we get to where hopefully everyone's going to get to maybe this year, we'll be using that data to make proactive decisions. Well, we end up with a wheelbarrow full of cash, and who doesn't like a wheelbarrow full of cash? Okay, so spring grazing management. Well, I think in spring it's important to be optimistic. It is going to get better, but at the same time realistic. Where actually are we? What is the current situation? And that's both what feed do we have on hand, what condition are our cattle in, how much grass do we have on farm, so what's our pasture availability, what's our farm demand, how do they compare? And you can see a normal spring's got many stages, and I think we're currently here, the spring of deception. So it looks like spring is coming, and then we check the weather forecast this morning. Meant to hail in Cornwall tomorrow. Temperatures for the first week of April look pretty rubbish, to be honest. We're sort of 1 or 2 degree nights, maybe 8 degree days, and that average soil temperature is really going to struggle to get sort of up into the grass growth region. So we've got a third winter ahead. It's probably going to warm up and get wet, and then we'll get to actual spring maybe around the 1st of May sometime. So being optimistic, spring's coming, but realistic at the same time. We need to have a plan ahead of us now that will cope with all those events, and at the same time ensure that we are meeting the animals' feed demand. So we're keeping all our animals fully fed, especially those that are lactating. So I'm sure not many of you will be aware or familiar with that real simple rule of thumb in spring is to graze all the fields by magic day. And the kind of the interesting thing is that to work at that magic day, you need to know your animal demand, and you need to know it in terms of kilograms of dry matter per hectare. So all of the animals, how much feed do they need, divided by the effective grazing area of the farm. And yeah, again, for dairy farmers, it's been slightly easier to calculate. For beef and sheep, been much harder with the multiple groups situation. But yeah, we've maybe got some options on how we can make that easier. The reason for doing that is it's threefold: remove winter growth and improve quality for the second rotation. Stimulate the plant to grow, so as a physiological effect on the plant, especially on the grass plant, that regrowth will be at a higher rate than if the pasture was left ungrazed. So you get an extra amount of dry matter grown in spring by getting that plant grazed earlier. And then lastly, and this is one perhaps we sometimes forget about, is to transition animals to pasture. When we do get through to the true spring and we get those high growth rates, then we want animals fully transitioned to pasture. We want the rumen biology and bacteria set up to utilize all of that high quality grass. And if they've been on silage, they've been on forage crops, they've been in a shed, and they've got a transition period to go through, we want that to happen now rather than later when grass growth is really taking off. So having the confidence to turn out by knowing the grass growth rates, by knowing the demand and average farm cover, that's all part of that picture. So magic days is defined as when pasture growth or the supply equals the farm demand. We're generally a bit more successful at measuring pasture growth. So we can use a plate meter, as about half of you were using. We can look at the change in average farm cover. We can see what the average growth is on farm. Farm demand, again, we can make we can achieve this, we can learn or work this out. And the kind of way of doing this reasonably simply is to use percentage of animal body weight to work out what the demand's going to be in kilos of dry matter. And we can make kind of a note or an adjustment based on our pasture quality. But as we'll touch on in a minute, actually in spring, we're really not concerned about pasture quality. So how do we use the animal demand, or how do we calculate animal demand? We will share after the webinar some tables with you that go into a bit more detail, but as basic rules of thumb, we've got maintenance, 1.5% of body weight, maintenance plus growth at 2.5%, then 3.5% is maintenance plus milk, so that's a lactating animal. And that rule of thumb really works across all stock classes. The only thing to be aware of is based on a pasture quality of 11 megajoules ME. So that's kind of mid-season grass. So that's sort of June, July, August grass. Maybe some might be slightly heading, a little bit more stem present. Where we are sat now, pasture quality is higher. So either animal intakes might be slightly less than estimated by that rule of thumb, or if we allocate to the rule of thumb, we may get slightly better performance than expected, which is no bad thing. And I said about pasture quality, well, nice thing in spring is that there's no need, shouldn't be any need to be worried about pasture quality. The results you see in front of you on the screen, that's taken from 13 farms in Wales, and that's a mixture of new pasture, permanent pasture, fertilised, unfertilised, lots of different altitudes. And that was all taken, I think it was the first week of March. You can see the average results from all those farms is that pasture quality was just under 13 ME, protein levels just under 26, so just over 25, and dry matter about 20. Well, given the cold weather we've had since then, dry matters will be higher, and I suggest there's been little or no change to ME and protein. So quality isn't an issue, and it's the one time of the year we can kind of relax on the quality of what they're eating. Available dry matter, the quantity, perhaps is likely to be more limiting at this time of year, depending on how the farm's set up. So another point to consider, and again, it's one that's sometimes missed in the excitement of grazing and getting lots of grass ahead of animals and having plenty of feed around, is that the different stock classes on farm, there's a big range in sizes, big range of body weights, big range in size, and so therefore there's a big range in size of the mouth on those animals, and it would make sense to think about that they, depending on the size of the animal, should depend on the optimum pasture height for optimum intake. So all ruminants only graze for so many hours per day. They only take so many bites per minute of pasture. So in order for an animal to grow as quickly as possible, then they need high quality pasture, and it needs to be at the optimum height. So for each bite they take, they can get as much grass in per bite as possible. So in a set stocking scenario, we'll put aside the issues of set stocking around reduced productivity and issues around pasture quality loss later in the season. But for a short period, if we were to want optimum animal performance, we should set stock of those optimum covers seen in the middle column. In a rotational grazing situation, our target maximum entry covers are given by the max column. So if we're setting up a rotation and we're looking at pasture wedge, which we'll do shortly, we don't want to be going to covers that are over that max. And if you were designing a dairy system, for instance, then your target entry cover is probably going to sit around 3,000 kilos. And that's the area you're allocating. And that also actually ends up determining your stocking rate on that farm as well. So it's all interlinked. But they're kind of good guides to work to when we're looking at allocating animals to farms and start thinking about pasture wedges and what's going to be appropriate for our animals. And particularly, I think probably weaned lambs are the one that get a bit of a raw deal. They quite often get bombarded with quantity and don't get the quality they need. But that's something we can focus on a little bit later in the season. So we've got a couple of examples to look at going back to the demo farm. First one's cattle. When we think about cattle at this time of year, we're trying to simplify things on farm. So we can identify our grazing groups, and an aim on farm would be to have as few groups as possible, because that means we've got less things to manage, less rotations to manage. one option for group size is maximum number of cows that the bull can service, or maximum number of animals the water trough can service. And it's an issue most dairy guys have overcome, but quite limiting on some beef farms, number of animals that the water supply or the water system can service limits group size. Once we've got our groups and identified who's in them, then we can start allocating fields to those groups. And to do that, we need to know how much grass we're going to grow, or how much grass is already in the fields, and then what's that group, what demand does that group have? Once we've done that, we can then consider options. All right, how do we manage the week ahead of us? So if it's wet, are we going to subdivide those fields so we can move the animals more regularly? If conditions are good, how much feed do we have? Do we need to ensure really high utilization because we're quite tight on feed, and therefore we need to utilize 85–90% of what's in that paddock? So we're going to shift maybe daily, even though conditions are good. Or have we got some feed in hand, but we've got a lot of work on lambing, so we're going to relax that that on time. We're going to shift every 2 or 3 days. How big are our groups? I think with that, Paddy, that links us straight into our cattle demo.
Great. Okay. So let's bring back the Rumi app. Excellent. Okay. Ready to roll.
Okay. So you see this. So it's a real farm. It's Ian's farm. Pasture covers are measured at real. The groups that we've got on the farm, you see on the left-hand side, thankfully in Ian's case, are not real. So we've got breeding ewes, more than 250 ewes, and they're on a pre-lambing rotation. We've got cycler cows. They calved sort of through February and into March. There's 50 of those, and they're sort of on rotation. They're in the fields just outlined in like a light blue. Then we've got terminal ewes. They've all lambed. They lambed in March, sort of early March. There's 300 or 350 of those, and they're currently allocated to the fields in orange. What's left in the shed then, may actually be left in Ian's shed at the minute, is our growing cattle. So we're going to add them in as a group, and then we're going to allocate some fields or some paddocks to them, and we're going to see if Rumi can help us decide how many fields or paddocks we need to allocate to have a good first rotation.
Okay.
So I'll tell you the numbers, Paddy. I'll let you drive the
growing cow.
I will say growing cattle.
Cattle, yeah, absolutely. And what's the first stock class, James?
Yeah, so the growing cattle group's broken into two stock classes. We've got the steers.
Yeah.
And they're 350 kilos. And there's 35 of them.
Great.
And then in terms of demand, how many kilos of dry matter does each animal need? Rule of thumb, 2.5% is maintenance plus growth. And this is a growing stock class, so we can use that rule of thumb. So top of my head, what's that, 8.6 kilos?
Yeah.
Okay.
Good maths.
So it's almost like we planned it. Second stock class will be the heifers. And the only reason for splitting these, even though they're going to run the same groups, the heifers are slightly lighter, and this will give us a more accurate group demand. So they're 320 kilos.
320.
There's 30 of those.
Yeah.
And that's 8 kilos, is 2.5%.
Great.
Okay. So hit save, Paddy, and let's see what that tells us.
So there you go. Got the, yeah.
Okay, so we can see a number of animals in the group. Their demand per hectare is infinity because they're not currently allocated to any paddocks. So let's start adding some fields or some paddocks and see where we get to, how much area we need to allocate to get somewhere sensible. So there's a block in the middle of Ian's farm that looks nicely divided, all split up and ready for sort of a high performance stock class like this to graze. So do you want to start adding some of those fields in, Paddy?
Yeah. Thanks, Ian. The good layout. Go to the more options, and we can just quickly add that to growing cattle there. It's nice and easy, and we can just work our way around the fields using the map, adding them as we go. I think we'll add 8 to start with. We'll see what that looks like. Yeah. Just a note as well, James. Yeah, you can add as many animal groups as you want. You can call the animal groups what you want. you can add as many different stock classes as you want to each animal group as well. So hopefully that provides you with some flexibility.
Okay, so if I wanted to have a group that was a flood, maybe, so maybe cattle and sheep from the same group, then I could add in maybe growing cattle and mix them up with some ewes and lambs.
Yeah. Okay,
cool.
Okay, so that's, I've added 8 fields to this rotation so far.
Okay, and they've all been about sort of one hectare up to 1.3 hectares. So we've got maybe 9 hectares in total there, maybe 9.5.
Right.
Yeah, so if we just go back out.
Back arrow, that will now show me what the demand looks like for the group with these fields.
Yeah, so we can see there's a demand there based on the animal intake divided by the area available, gives us 62 kilos of dry matter per hectare per day. So that maybe looks fine if this was middle of spring and we knew grass growth rates were in that region or likely to be in that region. But as we saw on the home screen, current grass growth rates are 19 kilos. So let's just see. So let's just go to that grass wedge and see how many days ahead that gives us in terms of days ahead grazing. Okay, suggest that sounds a bit high.
Right. Okay.
If we want to add more fields to that rotation, then
yeah,
we can do that from this screen, can't we?
Yeah, sure. That's easy. It's just a sign here, and then is it 33 and 34? I think we're gonna add.
Yeah, I think that's the 2 fields on the bottom of that block. Yeah, I'm sure Ian could tell us otherwise. And if it was your own farm, no doubt you'd be working with field names, so it'd be easy to allocate, or you might have your paddocks set up, sort of paddock ID. As we added that additional area, we see the wedge updates. So the fields are dropped into the wedge, and we've got a demand line. And our demand line is being set by our rotation length, which is 30 days, our post-grazing target, so that's the grass we aim to leave behind. And then based on that rotation length, post-grazing target, and the demand of our group, it's giving us an estimated or calculated pre-grazing target. And so that pre-grazing target, we reflect that to the slide I shared about optimum animal intakes and sort of maximum entry covers. Then for growing cattle, it was around 2.8. So that's kind of indicating that this rotation we have is at the top end. So our stocking density is quite high. We need to have quite a lot of grass available per hectare to cope or to carry that group. And this is the sort of the top end of the number of fields I want to allocate based on this rotation length. If you were to change the rotation length, Paddy, so if you go to 24 days.
Yep, no problem.
Okay, we're allocating more area per day, and therefore the entry cover drops. Same animals, same demand, but more area per day. And this gets us back in a range. So that's kind of indicating that later in the season, when grass growth rates are higher, those 10 paddocks, that's going to make a really nice rotation for these cattle if we can get down to a 24-day round. For our opening rotation, where we need to be maybe thinking about, it's the 25th of March now, we're going to start this tomorrow, 26th. How quickly do I want to go around that block? I want to have to know I've got probably 30 days ahead of me, or maybe I want to see 20 days minimum ahead of me. I want 20 days of grass ahead of me in the hope that as I get on day 20, pasture growth rates have increased, and I'll be more comfortable then maybe just seeing a week or so ahead, a week to 10 days ahead. So in this case, you put the rotation length up to 35, Paddy?
Yeah.
Okay, we see on the rotation length 35 days, and our grazing days ahead has actually been updated, so that's cool. On a rotation length 35 days, a feed deficit opens up. So the decision now would be, for Ian, knowing his farm, knowing what his overall farm demand maybe is, and what other land he could allocate, how confident, when is his magic day going to be for the farm? So if it was just one block and one group, then we'd say, well, actually, this is all the land he's got available, and he's going to turn out all his cattle. So his farm demand is 49 kilos. So his magic day will be when the farm grows 49 kilos a day, which in a normal spring on a beef and sheep farm with a little bit of nitrogen applied and fairly new lays isn't likely to be probably until maybe the 10th of May. So if we're going to start grazing on the 26th, we would want to see further ahead. we'd effectively be on a rotation length of 45 days, and we'd have a bigger deficit. So we can, as you say, run some scenarios through on here and just get a feel for how this fits with what grass we've got available and what land we've got available as well. If Ian's got extra fields, then we probably would add those in. So certainly this time of year, because growing conditions are so good, we'd be more than happy to add in extra paddocks, particularly if there may be silage fields that we would normally maybe consider shutting up. I think the way growth is looking, that we probably would consider sort of grazing some silage fields now to extend rotations. So that if we add in more fields, we can increase the feed available ahead of us, and the grazing days ahead goes up.
So that's, yeah, 2 extra fields there.
Yeah, so for where Ian's farm is in the country, that's brought the demand down on that block. That's given us kind of close to target grazing days ahead to start grazing this group. If weather forecast was good for tomorrow, for the weekend, I'd be fairly happy to start grazing that group. But also I wouldn't be shy to bring them back in the shed for a couple of days if it got really wet next week. But I can see enough feed ahead of me, and I can see a grass wedge that's balanced to start that rotation. In terms of which field I'd start in, obviously I'm going to graze those fields probably in order, or they're set up as paddocks. And if the cattle hadn't been out of the shed, if they've been wintered in a shed, I'd probably look to graze a field that was the driest, maybe slightly smaller, and probably sat around the middle or upper third of the wedge. So I probably wouldn't go into the field with the highest cover. I made to go for a field that's closer to the buildings and had a cover of sort of around 2,000 kilos in it, because they are going to go out, they are going to run around, and if they go into really long grass, they're just going to waste a lot of it. So a couple of days in a paddock that's kind of got an average cover, maybe sort of around 2.2 to 2.4, and then move them through to the correct field once they've settled down. Cool.
Just a side note as well, when you're playing around with the wedge, if you want to take any fields out or move them to other groups, you just click on the field and you can put it back in silage or assign another one, and you can also add from the map as well.
Yeah, I think what we could do, Paddy, is if we stick with this and we go to the ewe groups, yeah, perhaps we'll look at the breeding ewes first.
So here's breeding ewes. This is the yellow block up here.
Yeah, so suggestion is that these are on a pre-lambing rotation, not due to start lambing till end of the first week of April. So they'll be grazing those fields, and if we look at the grass wedge, whilst they're on a pre-lambing rotation, the rotation length and the pasture wedge is maybe a useful tool. Once they set stop for lambing, the usefulness kind of diminishes a little bit. So instead, when they're set stop, we're probably keeping an eye on the average cover, because that's really important for sheep, for ewe intakes, to ensure they can reach peak lactation. And we're probably looking at average cover trends combined with the growth rate and the demand. And we'll see if growth rates don't lift, but the demand stays high, we'd see those grazing days ahead diminishing. And we'd see the average cover dropping. And we'd probably kind of set a bit of a floor at 1,600 kilos. And we'd say we do not for twins stocked at 5 an acre, we don't want to see average farm cover drop, or average block cover in this case, drop below 1,600. Once it got close to 1,700, depending on the forecast, we probably look to intervene. I think actually if we go to the terminal ewes, Paddy, we'll see that's the case.
Right, yeah. Terminal ewes, this is the pink block here. Yeah. And shall I open the grass wedge? Yeah, you can open the grass wedge. Also, actually we can see from the map there the lighter colours, and that lighter colour feeds through to the grass wedge, doesn't it, in terms of the average covers of some of those fields. So we said the scenario here is that these lambed in March. They maybe lambed indoors, but turned out with lambs at foot, and they've been grazing in these fields. And because growth rate's been low and because their stocking rate's pretty high, covers have dropped. So though the average cover looks okay, there's actually sort of 4 fields in that wedge where the average cover is getting down to sort of a level I'd suggest where you'd look for intervention. And the intervention options we have is supplement or add in more area. So okay. I think where the map view is quite useful is you can kind of sort of zoom out and get a picture of the farm and say, okay, where have I got spare feed? And if you go back a stage again, Paddy, just the home screen. Yeah. Because you've got the groups lined up, you can just kind of shoot through those groups and you can just compare the demand
So you've got breeding ewes, 34 kilos a hectare. That's okay, sounds okay. Growing cattle 40, suckler cows 33, terminal ewes 50. So straight away you say, okay, terminal ewes I'm highly stocked. There may be a logistics reason for it, but it's immediately flagging up with a warning, especially compared to that growth rate, that group's going to be the first one to come under pressure. So what's my solution going to be? Well, there's a couple of fields on Ian's. We maybe can't use the fields you just drawn on the neighbour's side, but there's 2 fields there, isn't there? Well, maybe we can move some ewes and lambs across to one of those fields. Yeah, and one of those fields looks like it's got more grass in than the other.
This one here, field 22, got 2,071 kilograms of dry matter per hectare cover. Okay. 4.4 hectares. What do you think?
Yeah. So let's add that in.
Okay. Terminal ewes. So that's now in the mix. And go back to the grass wedge, James, to show you what the change is. Yeah, so we can see the average farm cover is lifted slightly. We've got an extra paddock in. The demand's now dropped by 10 kilos or 11 kilos. There's a few more grazing days ahead. Situation's not great still. That farm covers that block covers can be dropping, but we bought ourselves some time, and we can either play it with a fingers crossed, and we hope that the first week of April, or at least the second weeks, can be bloody nice, or we can put some supplement in as well. And to put in supplement, we would do that through the edit of the group. We just reduce the demand for those ewes. So perhaps we'll look at that just quickly, Paddy. Yeah, no problem. Here you go. So, yeah. There are. So lactating animal is being fed to 3.5% body weight. If we were to feed, well, to make it easy, 450 grams per head per day of something, could be ewe nuts, could be fodder beet. So that would just drop their demand to 2 kilos. Yep, so we'll hit save on that. Great, and go back in. Okay, so we can now sort of see 2 weeks ahead with that supplement being added in, and the demand's dropped by a further 7 kilos per hectare. So it's still in deficit, and the whole farm is actually in deficit. So the whole average farm cover will be dropping, but we've sort of got a fair degree of control over it, and we can see ahead. We can see 2 or 3 weeks ahead at this stage, which I think for where we are in this sort of spring of deception is going to be useful. Great. Okay, that's cool. Cool. Thanks, James. Yeah, cool. That's yeah, I think that's all from me, Paddy. So I'll let you carry on. Okay, great. We'll dip back into the presentation, and yeah, I'm gonna present. So yeah, we wanted to. This is where our product's at the moment with the technology, and we wanted to just share with you quickly the technology roadmap. So where we've been and what's in store. So Britta's gonna run us through this.
Yeah, so this is just going to be a very coarse overview. So as Paddy already said, I mean, we use multispectral satellite images to estimate the field covers, and really multispectral satellite, or multispectral is just a fancy word for natural light. It might not be the natural light that the human can process, so the wavelengths are a little bit different too, but this is really it, it's images. And the way these the cover readings are computed from these images, or the way these computing rules are established, it's actually similar to how a human learns. So you show the computer very roughly, you show them images of the fields, and you show them also readings of these fields. And from this, after a while, the app gets trained and knows, okay, so this means so and so much cover is on this field, and this means this. It's going to be important later, so remember it. Okay. And then also, of course, the app learns similarly. So you show it an image of a field, and then it says, okay, oh yeah, this should be this cover. However, of course, the satellite has a disadvantage to a human, and that is they cannot see through clouds, right? Because they fly above the clouds. So, so this is one of the reasons why, in addition to that, in January, we added a feature that allows you to add your own cover. This is the feature that Paddy showed, right? So this would allow you to bridge for weeks when there is no satellite pass. So we measured it's an average about 4 per month that we have, where we can actually see something. But again, this is an average. So every now and then you might not have one per week, but you want still to use the app. So then you can input these readings. But then, of course, another very important reason is also for you to actually know how well this works and to build some trust in the app. And this is also for us a very good feedback to know how well this now actually works. Right? So ideally, actually, our goal is that you don't have to input anything at all, right? But then another thing is that, of course, farms work very differently, and there's these microclimates in various fields, right? So while we believe you will not have to input a lot, we still believe you might every now and then have to adjust to your particular farm. So readings that you input will also allow us to adjust the readings to your particular needs. And then coming back to how we trained the multispectral images, it will also improve the overall grass model, because the more readings we have, the easier it will be, or the more we can train, again, the app to actually detect covers better. Right? So in addition to that, also what we have is we set up in February 10 pilot farms, we call them, where we collect in a very controlled environment various cut and weight samples. And this goes not only, so we don't only collect the cut and weights, but we also collect weather data, soil samples, and so on and so forth. And this, again, will allow us to refine the model that we have right now a little better, but also to have a really exact valuation on how well this actually works. Righty. And then finally, all of this helps us to, end of June, actually do the same thing that we're doing right now with multispectral, meaning imagery, with radar satellite imagery. And this is really exciting because radar can see through clouds. So instead of just having 4 images per month, or an average 4 images per month, we might have over 20. Right? Yeah. So, and we're hoping to launch this end of June, or we're planning to. Right.
And when Britta says we can't see through clouds with multispectral images, she's right, but also she's selling herself a bit short, because actually here's some of the machine learning that our engineers, including Britta, have already applied to some of the cloud cover we see in multispectral images. So with the machine learning, we're already able to take out some of those thin cloud layers. And once we get this working with radar and we get more data, we'll get better and better. James, I just wanted to, thanks Britta, and James, I just wanted to ask you, are there any slides that you'd like to go over, or are you up to speed with your content?
Yeah, no, I'm happy, Paddy. I thought we covered all that. So yeah, well, so we'll take any questions if there are any, but I think we're looking good so far.
Yeah, I was going to suggest actually, we've got 2 questions in the Q&A, which I thought might be good to have a quick look at. There's one from Edward.
Yeah, I'll type an answer to Edward.
Okay, thanks, James.
Yeah, and post that for everyone to see.
Good stuff. Okay. Moving ahead then, we'd like to tell you about a special offer which is available to everybody who's on this webinar and who has registered to be a Rumi early bird. So what is this? Well, the core value proposition of our product is that it helps you measure grass, right? And it saves you time doing it. So at the moment, we believe it takes a skilled farmer and a good grass manager to measure grass. And we believe that person's time is valued at about £25 an hour. This is what we've been hearing. Just as a side note, we think your time is worth a lot more than that, actually. But if we're going by this rule of thumb, which is what we've been learning, then let's look at what the cost of that is. So if it takes this farmer about 4 hours to measure a 100 hectare farm with a plate meter and then input all the data into a piece of software, something like Agronet, then that means it's costing farmers about £5 a hectare a month to get the data they need. And make no mistake, we think you should be measuring your grass. This is definitely worth it. But there's potentially a less costly way to get better results more easily. And that's what we think Rumi can provide. So not only is it £5 a hectare per month, but to actually get the really valuable results, you then need to repeat this weekly throughout the season. And I won't go on about that much more because I think you guys probably are all very familiar with this conundrum, the time and effort it takes to measure grass. So with our offer at £1 a hectare per month, Rumi will save you £4 a hectare a month, just in terms of the time it will save you having to measure your grass. We do ask you to do it sometimes, but it will be less and less as the product evolves, and it's a huge amount less than you're currently required to do so with other products. On top of that, we're offering all webinar attendees a 30% discount for the first year they subscribe with Rumi. And I'm going to explain how you can unlock that discount in the next slide. So there's the discount. Also included is free monthly webinars. These won't be sales webinars. These are for people who are paying already. So it will be practical, timely advice for the time of the season, much like you've seen this evening. We'll team up with some of our favorite consultants. We've got some great people here tonight, Lupo, Liz, Robert's here, the people we know and trust, and to give you the additional support you need with the product to get real results on your farm. And the Rumi team would be in these webinars as well, available for you to do Q&A, discuss product features with, and hear your feedback. You can give your consultant access to your Rumi account as well. We have that feature. So you'll be able to get better advice on your grassland management by sharing it and having conversations with your consultant. And they'll be able to support you. And of course, you can start for free and see how you go with it to start off with. Now, in terms of unlocking the discount, we've decided we would like you to enter some farm walks, and with these walks, if you enter up to 6, you can unlock the full 30% discount on your first year subscription. So that's a 5% discount for every farm walk you enter into Rumi. We would ask for a minimum of 2 farm walks, which buys you a minimum discount of 10%. But we think a 30% discount's really well worth it. And if you have a 100-hectare farm, that would be £360 off your first year subscription. We would ask your farm walk to cover at least 50% of your grazing platform, or if you've got a small farm, at least 25 hectares. And to unlock the discount, we would ask that you enter these walks into the product before the end of May 2021. So that's 2 months, 60 days roughly. So how to do this? If you're already a Rumi beta user, you have the product. It's the full version. Just start adding your walks. We know you registered for this webinar, so you're entitled to the discount. And if you're new to Rumi, then please register through our website. It's www.rumi.io. The link's up there. Happy to send this out to people after the webinar as well. It's a very short form. There's not too much detail to add, and we'll get you set up with an account over the next week. And again, we know you've registered for the webinar, so we know you're entitled to the benefits. And as a final note, I just wanted to say that we are a small team. We're a growing team. We're able to do that now, and I think that we are genuinely friendly people. So if you need support with the product, you can actually ring us up and speak to us, real people, and you'll get through to us quickly. we'd be very happy to hear from you and have any conversations that you wish to have with us. And that brings us to the end of our webinar. So thank you very much indeed for your time and for listening. And yeah, please, any questions you have about the product, about the deal, anything you'd like to ask James about grazing advice, please do so. Looks like we've got a couple of questions in the Q&A.
Yeah, you have, Paddy. So shall I act as any questions for you, I'll ask you, and any for me, you can ask me. Yes, so Alex Green said, is there an app so data can be entered in the field? Or I guess if Alex has plate metering, can he pop his measurements in as he's measuring?
You can use Rumi on your mobile phone, so you'd be able to enter the measurements in through your mobile phone, and we'll be adding more features to that over the coming months. Okay, so you log in via your web browser at the moment, but it's set up to function and display properly on the mobile. Correct. Okay, cool. And then James King, we might both answer this one. Would anyone using Rumi be able to just use Rumi, or would it also need to be used with programs like allocate or Farmax? So I guess, James, from what you saw in the demo, that I guess the stage it is now, it's the same functionality as you would find in AgriNet, but wouldn't have the Farmax as a farm management program is far more complex. Perhaps, to say, I'm sure with time it'll probably evolve to be maybe a happy medium between the two. So it'll give some look ahead ability like Farmax has, without the sort of the massive complexity that it also has as well. So yeah, hopefully evolve to be a useful tool in between the two. Yeah. And then one for you guys, John Bennett, can you subscribe for the grazing season only, i.e. March to October, or is it an annual subscription? It's an annual subscription. With the monthly webinars, we'll be running those throughout the whole year, so we'll be able to give you advice throughout the year of how best to plan ahead, even during winter. And then we intend to launch more and more product features to help you across the whole year. So yes, it'll be running as an annual subscription.
I guess the point as well was that if you want to find out how many kilos of dry matter a field produces, you want to know for the whole year. So an annual subscription will give you field performance or field productivity on an annual basis. So tons of dry matter produced per hectare, you'd need to do looking at the fields for the whole year, although admittedly probably 75 to 80% of the growth would take part in the May to October period. The full year would give you full visibility.
Yeah.
Cool. So question for Dave Knight, if you add supplements, which is creep feed for lambs, would you just adjust the demand percentage on the ewes? Yeah, I think as a rule, as a guide to that, Dave, if you were creeping the lambs and they were before 8 weeks old, would suggest you probably made no adjustment. And then post 8 weeks, you could include those lambs as separate entities and reduce the ewe demand back to 2.5% and put the lamb demand in separately. That would be an option to kind of get a decent feed demand. So calculate the lamb demand based on 2.5% of lamb weight, and then subtract the creep feed being eaten in terms of kilos per head per day. But I'd only do it after 8 weeks of age in terms of lamb age.
Cool. Any final questions in there, or is that now's your chance, guys? If you've got any last questions you'd like to ask us. And by the way, if you have a question you'd like to ask us afterwards, please get in touch, give us a ring. You can find the details on the website. We're always here and happy to help.
Yeah, no, I think that's good. There's been some really nice comments made in the chat as well. Yeah, I'm pretty excited by this. As a consultant, any one-to-one work we do, then it's always a challenge. Getting people to measure grass or getting up-to-date farm cover readings that you can kind of rely on to help give advice. So to have a tool you can go to before the meeting with the farmer and have a quick view of the farm, get an idea of where they're at, see what the farm demand is versus supply, and then to be able to look ahead a bit and plan accordingly. Really useful, and for farmers to have a tool they could go to, particularly in the spring. So busy at the moment with people lambing at home, people lambing, calving. We've got infrastructure set up. Weather's challenging, so there's a lot of stuff going on. To have something like this, you can just use to keep an eye on the farm and check things are going in the right direction. Hopefully, really helpful. And yeah, you've got a bit of work to do to get it all the way there. But yeah, I think sure it's in a good place. Or in good hands.
Thank you very much for joining us tonight, James, and for all the additional advice you've given. It's been great. Cool. Okay, it's a wrap. Let's call it an evening then. Thank you very much, everybody.
Yeah, thanks for everyone's time. Good to see everyone. Well, not see everyone. Thanks for joining us at least. Yeah, wish everyone a good evening. And if you are lambing, stay safe.